What's up there guys, thanks for tuning in. I'm Rick, this is Fanfare for the Conscious, and in the video today I'm going to be asking what's the matter with matter? Let's dive in. So welcome back to Left Brain Spirituality, and this is going to be part 2 today, where I'm asking what is the matter? Well, matter is what we consider to be the physical world, in opposition to energy, which is more the ethereal, potential concepts of science. Matter is what we refer to as the material world, and matter comes in multiple different flavours. The main ones which you will see are solids and liquids and gases. There is also plasma, of which the sun is made of, and you'll see in neon lights and xenon lights and things like that. So those are the 4 states that you find matter in. When you go a little bit deeper into the physics, they do actually start talking about Bose-Einstein condensate as well, which is theorized to be a 5th state of matter, but that's something we can possibly cover in another video. Now, the important thing to remember about matter, the physical world, which we consider to be the sort of major part of our existence, is that matter is made up of atoms. And atoms are considered to be the smallest building block of the universe. Everything is, composed of these atoms, which then make molecules and then form bigger structures like proteins and cells and all that sort of stuff. So let's start at the top here with what is matter. Well, matter is not actually what you've been led to believe, and matter is always pitched as this very, very solid thing, when in reality it's fairly ethereal in itself. I believe one scientist, who I couldn't actually find the name of, but I do remember the quote, saying that the physical world is more akin to a concentrated thought than it is to something really truly tangible, and matter never really truly interacts, because protons will repel each other and electrons will repel each other, so individual atoms never actually come into contact with each other. And when you feel yourself touching things, you're not actually touching anything. Your atoms are not making contact with the atoms of the object that you are touching. They are held apart at incredibly small nanoscopic distances by forces, primarily the force of magnetism. So as we see here, matter itself is 99.99999 etc. percent empty space. If you were to imagine a single proton of a hydrogen atom being in the centre of a football stadium, then that proton itself would be the size of a full stop thereabouts, and the electron cloud would reach out, the electron shell or orbital itself would reach out to the very edges of the stadium, and that gives you just sort of an idea of how little actual substance there is to matter in itself. So yeah, as it says, atoms here are mostly empty space, and there's even more space between the individual atoms as well. So when we actually think about the physical world, you've got to really, be very cognizant of how little substance there actually is to it, and it is more a balance of forces than it is anything of any real physical substance, as real as it feels to you and I. So let's talk a little bit about atoms. Atoms themselves are made up of protons, which have a positive charge and form what we would mostly determine to be the physical mass of the atom. In relative terms, they talk about protons having a mass of 1. Neutrons, which are considered to be neutral. Now, I've put a question mark next to the neutron. I'm not going to specifically cover it today. If you want to do a little bit more research on the growing understanding of exactly how the atomic world really works, then you want to go and have a look at Nassim Haramein, his Black Hole documentary, Hole with a W, and then have a look at resonance.is. Resonance is, there's lots of wonderful courses on there. He's doing lots of talks on video, Zoom meetings and such things, and there's lots of reading material there for you to start to learn about a new way of considering the world, which actually has had some experimental proof to back this up. This isn't just theories. This man has actually and we'll talk about it a little bit later, come up with the most accurate prediction of the charge radius of a proton in itself. So this isn't just some sort of bunk. This guy really actually does have experimental evidence to back up a lot of what he's talking about. Anyway, so you've got the neutrons, which are supposed to be neutral, and then you've got the electrons, which are supposed to be negative. Now, in relative terms, electrons are considered to actually have zero mass. Their mass is considered to be so small as it is negligible, and that's a really important thing to bear in mind when we're considering this, that the electron itself is considered to have no mass, but also has the same amount of charge as the proton, relatively speaking. So therefore, if a proton has a relative charge of 1 and electron has a relative charge of 1, then they actually balance themselves out to produce a neutral atom. So let's talk about a little bit more of the actual reality of the way atomic physics really actually works. And I'll talk a little bit more about the forces in a later video, because this does all eventually tie back into the spirituality side of things, but you've got to make sure we've got a lot of the groundwork covered here with our understanding of the way the world works before we can start to extract the spiritual truth from that. So this is what you're taught in your textbook, and this is what a lot of people will have as their understanding of what an atom looks like. And we're just considering a hydrogen atom here because it's the simplest one to draw, but effectively the structure for any other atom is the same. And what you have is you have a nucleus where most of the mass is concentrated in the form of protons, and in mainstream theory also neutrons in larger atoms. For example, helium has 2 protons and 2 neutrons, I believe, whereas hydrogen only has the 1 proton in the centre. That proton, in the traditional sense, is considered to be orbited by an electron. Now, when they talk about electron orbitals and electron shells, these are the different energy levels on which you can find electrons, and in larger atoms you would have multiple shells. The mainstream physics considers that there are only ever 2 electrons in the first shell, and then the second and third shells have 8. The third shell can actually sometimes have 10 or more, but then we're sort of getting a little bit more complicated, and that's a little bit beyond the remit of the video today. So we're taught that this proton is this solid thing, like a ball, where all the mass is contained, and that the electron again is also this point source of negative charge, whereby the electron orbits the proton very much like the way a planet orbits a star. However, the reality is actually a little bit different, and if you look into the actual physics at a deeper level, you will find that all this is true, that the proton is not actually this really rigidly defined thing. It is effectively a focused cloud, so to speak, of positive charge, and is described as having a charge radius. So rather than being this solid little cannonball, it is this focused point of positive charge. And when we come to the electron, it's very, very interesting because it is almost seen to pop in and out of existence at random. And this is shown by the idea of the different energy levels. In here, again, we've got a single energy level because we're dealing with a hydrogen atom, but in a more complex one, you would also have other energy levels. And these energy levels are places where you are most likely to find an electron if you looked for it. Once again, they don't seem to have any permanence. There is just always a chance of finding an electron, which again, like the proton, is not this physical cannonball focused point of mass. What it actually is this cloud of negative probability. And here we start to come into the ideas of masculine and feminine principles, the static and the dynamic elements of forces. The positive charge, the matter, the solid portion of the atom is the masculine component. It is fixed, it is rigid, it is focused. The negative energy, the electron, is the feminine form of that same energy. The only difference is that it is more distributed, it is more random, and it flickers in and out of existence with a greater degree of randomness. So when we actually look at how the universe is really structured, we get an even greater idea of how ethereal the universe itself actually is, and how intangible what we consider to be the material world actually is proven to be. So instead of having this solid proton as an actual physical particle and this electron as a physical particle, you can imagine these as areas of increasing or decreasing charges at opposite polarities. If you imagine this manifested in 3 dimensions, it would be like a cloud of very densely focused positive charge with a cloud of more distributed negative energy around it. So I'm going to finish up this little presentation today just with a quote from Albert Einstein. And that quote is, "Concerning matter, we have all been wrong. What we've called matter is really energy, whose vibration has been lowered so as to be perceivable to the senses. There is no matter." Now for your homework this week, guys, I would like you to meditate on the equation E equals mc squared and learn to understand the possible impact and ultimate truth that is presented by that equation. E is equal to energy, and energy is equal to mass times the speed of light squared. E equals mc squared. Something for your meditation, and we will cover that in part 3. If you have enjoyed this content, please hit the subscribe button, the thumbs up and the notification bell set to all. Make sure you're always kept up to date with all of my latest content, which drops on a Monday and a Wednesday and a Friday at 8 PM UK time. If you want to be part of our lawful banking network, then please go and log on, get yourself signed up and join our lawful people's assemblies. Don't forget to take care of yourselves, stay free, think free and act free, and I'll see you next time.